Alright, Gigantomaxia review. This is a review on Kentaro Miura's manga one-shot Gigantomaxia. If you don't want it spoiled, then I suggest you essentially just read it before you watch this video in any way you can. Go to eBay, go to any comic book store that has it. It hasn't been printed since 2014, so it's a bit hard to find. So I wouldn't hate you, or I would understand if you listen to this video anyway. So yeah, here we go. So we all know about Berserk and basically how it's Kentaro Miura's magnum opus. It has this amazing world building, amazing art, characters are fleshed out, the themes are well realized. It's just 10 out of 10, one of the best manga ever. But Berserk is Kentaro Miura's magnum opus, but I think Gigantomaxia is essentially just Kentaro Miura's hidden gem. Gigantomaxia it's basically centered around this wrestler named Delos and his mystic robot. I'm not really sure what she is, but she's essentially just this mystic helper that gives her Delos is a guy that gives Delos her nectar that's inside her body. She's essentially kind of I don't know, I could say a symbiote, and they essentially kind of wander Earth, but that's by the way a million years in the future, and they're kind of tasked with making Earth better. And one day they're kind of walking in the desert, and they kind of get they essentially just get taken by these bug people. I mean, they're not exactly bug people. They're humans with physical characteristics of bugs. Say exoskeletons, but in the when push comes to shove, they're bug people. And essentially, they kind of they bring him to their village. They tie him up. They essentially kind of have people throw garbage and rocks at his head, and they essentially force him into gladiatorial combat with one of their best fighters. This fighter is kind of it's a huge dude with his body's just it's he's kind of they're kind of genetic, they're genetic prize fighter, because his skin is mostly exoskeleton. He's very strong. When he punches, it hurts because his skin is it's very, very, very hard. And essentially, in the gladiatorial arena, the villagers they gather around, and they're kind of bloodthirsty because Delos is essentially just a human, and the bug people kind of have they have a beef with humans, and so they're kind of egging the prize fighter to basically just kill him, kill him in the most brutal way. And basically it's to the point where after they hypothetically kill Delos, they'll kill the little symbiote girl that's hanging around him too. And what happens is that Delos, through his own fighting style, interestingly, which is kind of which is akin to pro wrestling, manages to defuse the entire situation. After the fight, he manages to win the respect of the prize fighter and the entire village, which is something that I kind of love, because it kind of reminds me of of pro wrestling, where essentially it's you're you have two fighters that they kind of they have a personality and a charm to them, and essentially it's just one big show. And he essentially through his fighting style, kind of just through essentially just just suplexing him and basically blocking all his attacks, Like he manages to put on like one big show for the villagers, and they basically all just love him. And you know, it's for some, it's kind of like part of his philosophy essentially, where he's a gladiatorial fighter. Delos is like before this was a gladiatorial fighter, and basically he was kind of like stuck in a situation where he essentially just had to fight for his life. Basically, you know, the fighters had this mentality, like, you know, you can essentially see it in their faces. Basically, it's like, it's you or me, and I choose me. You know, I want to live, so I'm going to kill you. And basically, his fighting style is kind of like, you know, he uses his fighting style to basically just, you know, to protect him and the life of his opponent. He uses his fighting style for pacifism, which is just, you know, it's a great, you know, piece of character development, and like for like Delos. And essentially, not long after, the villagers take him to their god, which is basically kind of like, it's basically like, you know, post-eclipse, you know, after Casca gets violated by Griffith, and essentially Griffith's like, you know, like through the violation, Griffith kind of like essentially just corrupts Guts and Casca's like embryo child, and like basically it's like it culminates in like the production of like this kind of like demon embryo that follows Guts everywhere. Well, basically their god is essentially just like, you know, it's like the fucked up embryo, but like bigger, and it's like it's covered in like trees and shrubbery. You can like, you can see like the eyes, like it's kind of like just, it's like it's on the verge of closing. It's kind of like weak. Basically, this god essentially is like it appeared in the forest one day, and it managed to essentially just like bring life to the desert for like the bug people, and they worship it as a god. And essentially the reason why the bug people and the humans have beef is because the humans, you know, the human empire wants to basically take that, you know, that little god, and, you know, basically use it for like their own, like, you know, for their own purposes. And so essentially an invasion happens again, and the humans invade with like this giant freakish, you know, with this giant freakish monster, like, you know, that they essentially have Oracle's control. And the conflict like comes to a head, but like Delos, basically, you know, being the pacifist that he is, comes in and intercepts everything. Essentially, he fights for the bug people by basically taking down the giant. But, you know, after he's taken down the giant, you know, the bug people kind of like, they go into a rage. It's like, finally, the human's weapon, it's down. We have the advantage here. And they essentially kind of like go in. It's like they see this as an opportunity for revenge. And so they kind of like go in, but like at the last minute, Delos also intercepts, like, you know, basically just comes in between like the bug people and the humans. And what happens is like he pleads for them to, you know, basically spare the humans, and the bug folk are not having it. It's like, no, they came in our village, they destroyed everything, they basically just murdered our children, they raped our wives. Fuck them. We're gonna basically show them what we felt. We're gonna basically do all the shit that they did to us, we're gonna do it to them. And basically, you know, the little symbiote girl kind of like manages to get in everyone's head, and basically just, you know, she shows like the bug people, like, you know, it's like, we can use the fallen giant to essentially, you know, to like help your god and basically, you know, give life to this desert, you know. But to do that, you need to basically like just hear Delos's plea. And they at first, like, you know, they're like, well, I don't know if I want to do this. But then like a little bug child starts to cry, and then, you know, that kind of like wakes him up and like gives that they like see it's like, yeah, okay, I think we should listen to the little girl, listen to Delos too. And so they basically take the giant, they retreat, take the giant, and like they basically kind of like bring back life to the forest. I assume it's not shown in the comic book, but I assume they do. And the humans, they're kind of like, their head kind of like gets erased. The memory of the desert, of the bug people, gets erased, and so peace is achieved. Essentially, it's like what happens is kind of like it's essentially that kind of like theme of like Berserk, where like where Guts post Eclipse, he's mostly focused on revenge, but his need for revenge starts to consume him, and it starts to basically distract him from what really matters in life. Basically, his friends, his Casca, his humanity. And essentially, like, I kind of like how basically sparks of that are kind of like in Gigantomaxia. I mean, and the action is that's kind of like that's kind of like my review of Gigantomaxia. Basically the art is amazing. Of course, it's Kentaro Miura. What do you expect? And the writing is pretty good. And yeah, if you're into Berserk, and if you're into giant monsters, if you're into Tokusatsu, then I recommend that you look at Gigantomaxia. This has been JEJR Art, and peace.